Alrighty, welcome to the world of scatterplots. And the first thing we need to be able to do is, well, recognize what a scatterplot looks like. And once we've got that down, then I want to start talking about correlation. And correlation basically means, how do we describe it? In the same way that we describe things with colors, or the same way we describe things as different shapes, we might also describe these with different words. And the words we're going to be using are linear, non-linear, positive, negative, strong, moderate, weak, or none. Those are the words we need to learn what they mean. But first of all, what does a scatterplot actually look like? No good to just talk about it. Now this is called, well I'm going to call like a blank scatterplot. Generally we'll have an x and a y variable, and then we'll have points all the way through. Now we could have points anywhere. We could have points filling it all the way up like this, or we could have not many points, like more like this. But all of these things are scatterplots. And what we're looking for is this thing called linear or non-linear. Now linear always looks like a really complicated word because it doesn't sound like its base word, which is line. So really all we're looking for is, in all of these dots, is there a line? Okay, so let's actually have a look. So imagine for a second I have all of these points like this. Well, you might say, it kind of looks like a fat line. It doesn't look like a single line, not like normal, but it kind of still follows the shape of a line, right? You could kind of imagine that a line would fit through that. Now it's pretty close to all of the points. There's no points really far out. So anything that is at all line shaped, even if it's a little bit fatter, a little bit skinnier, we call that linear. Now there's different strengths of linear. That's what we're going to come to later. But the first thing I just want us to be able to look at is something linear or not? I'll show you one that isn't linear. Now this isn't linear. Why? Because it's curvy. Curvy things are non-linear. So if it's in the shape of a line, it's linear. Let's have a look at some more. Do we think that one's linear? Well, I think the line passes through it pretty nicely, so that one is indeed linear. What about this one? Is this one linear? Not to me. Looks like a frowny face. So that one, non-linear. So if a line fits it, it's linear. If a line doesn't fit it, or if a curve fits it better, it's non-linear. So those are our beginning definitions. What's linear? What's non-linear? Well, the next part about it is to do with this positive or negative. Now, if it's non-linear, we don't care. It's out. I only care about whether it's strong, positive, or negative, depending on if the different types of linear. So these guys are both linear, and they give us two different examples. The linear on the top, that one is a positive. And some of you might be asking, well, why do we know that's positive? Well, it's positive because the slope is going up to the top right, like so. That's how we know it's positive, because it's pointing up to the right. Okay? This next one is negative. Why? Because it's pointing down to the right. So for this one, it's pointing down. You might think of it like stocks. if the stocks are going up, that's a good thing, positive growth. Whereas if the stocks are depleting and the prices are falling, that's a bad thing. You might also think of it in terms of your savings. If your savings are going up, that's a good thing. If your savings are going down, that's a bad thing. Alrighty? So we're not sure what we're measuring yet, but we're just trying to give descriptions. Let me give 3 graphs, and all I want you to do is tell me which ones are positive, which ones are negative, and which ones are linear, and which ones are not linear. Alright, so let's have a look at these ones. So, which ones are linear and which ones are not linear, and which ones are positive and which ones are negative. So let's look at this first one. First one looks pretty linear to me, and I'd agree. It is linear. Second one, not so much. It looks like another curve. Not going to fly. Third one looks nice and linear. And the first one probably looks quite linear indeed. Alrighty. So, now let's look at positive and negative. So this first one at the top left, is that positive or negative? Well, it's going upwards to the top right, so that means it's positive. Looking at the second one down here, bottom left, you can see that it's pointing down. And that means it's going to be negative. And the last one is pointing up to the right, so that means it's positive. Alrighty. Now let's look at different strengths. Okay? So these are linear positive, linear negative, linear positive. These ones are linear positive, linear negative. But they're not all the same. There's quite a bit of difference between, say, this one over here and this one here. They're both linear positive, but I want to make sure that I can actually differentiate the difference between them. So I'm going to show you 3 graphs. Now having a look at these 3 graphs, the first one's definitely linear, and it's definitely positive, and the points are all pretty close together. It's like a pretty tight pack. So when it looks like that, we call that linear positive, but we give it a descriptor. It's strong. Why? Because all of the points are really quite close together. Strong. So it's a strong linear positive. Now let's look at this next one. Now the lines are pretty close, but they're a little bit more spread out now. They're not as tightly packed. There's a little bit more breathing room. We call that moderate. It's not weak. They're definitely linear, but it's not as obvious. So this one's moderate, linear, positive. And this last one, I mean, it's still a line, right? It's just quite a big spread that we're looking at. So we call this weak, linear, and it's still positive because it's still pointing up to the right. Alrighty, So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to draw 3 negative graphs, and I want you to tell me whether they're strong, which one's strong, which one's moderate, and which one's weak. Alrighty, so which one do you think is a strong graph, which one do you think is a weak graph, and which one do you think is a moderate? Well, when I'm having a look at these ones, the first one I'm looking at is the top left, and that's pretty weak. You can see that there's definitely a negative linear trend, but it's pretty weak. Whereas this bottom left one, yeah, it's a little bit closer, so it's probably moderate. And this top right one, that'd be a strong. It's pretty close to a straight line. And all 3 of these graphs would be linear negative as well. Alrighty, so the last thing that I want us to have a look at is what's called none, or no correlation. You might have a look at it and you might go, what's that mess? And that's it. It is just a mess. There's no curve that fits it. There's no line that fits it. It's just properly spread out everywhere in every direction. And we call this no correlation. Because the curved ones, although a bit strange, there's still some kind of sense of shape. Whereas with no correlation, there's no real rhyme or reason. The points just almost seem randomly strewn all over the place. Okay? So, to finish up with today, I'm going to draw 4 graphs, and I want to give you to give them as many descriptors as you can. Is it linear, non-linear? Is it strong, weak, or moderate? Or is it positive or negative? I want you to give as many descriptors as you can. Alrighty, so have a go. See which ones do you think are which. Alright, so this top left one, linear, positive, strong. This one here, it's kind of got a curve to it. See this bend down here? We can't do that in a linear, because a linear straight line is never going to work. So I'm going to call this one non-linear. Bottom left, well, once again, that's linear. It's negative, and it looks like it's moderate. It's between moderate and strong, probably. It's definitely not weak. They're pretty close. This one is linear, because you can see there's these big gaps either side that are about the same size. They do form a bit of a pack. So it's definitely not no correlation. It's positive, but because it is a little bit stretched out, I'm definitely going to give that the weak. descriptor. Alrighty, so that is the different types of correlation. We have linear, nonlinear, positive or negative, strong, weak, moderate, or no correlation. Those are all of our different correlations. I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.